about that. When we, it is because we have entered into treaties that make us part of the community of nations that we have this situation, because there must be order, there must be rules of engagement. Otherwise, nobody will deal with it with us. We can't be isolated. Can we change anything going forward? Trying to learn from this particular experience. Of course, the ordinary thing to say is that we need to be a lot more orderly in our processes. That would be the simplistic, logical way. Is there anything Nigeria can do, for example, so that we don't have this kind of a situation in future? Does our constitution allow that, sorry, governments are not going to be able to get us into this mess anymore because we simply won't guarantee any loans?
Well, that's not a constitutional issue, but what I can tell you is that this is where the office of the Attorney General Federal Attorney General comes into play powerfully, because it's the legal clearinghouse of the government. So if the federal government is going to stand as guarantor to any foreign loan or contractual obligations, it means that there has to be a very firm and strong agreement on what happens if the primary party defaults. How does the federal government, where does the federal government get remedies from? All this has to be done. Look, there's nothing wrong with subnationals engaging in contractual obligation with foreign entities.
Nothing wrong, so far as they play their own part.
These are things we talked about, referred to sometimes as foreign investment, direct foreign investment, because they were going to build, operate, and then at some point transfer. But the conditions just have to be right for the country to enter. Because you see, the balance side of things is that we also have predators on the international scene who go to different undeveloped countries to carry out this kind of heinous practice and rip them off. Recall the story that Kunjiwala told in her book about a company that had no capacity, no knowledge at all in the field, that they were coming to Nigeria to sell. And they wanted to, I think, rebuild part of our ports for a huge amount of money. Mm-hmm. But they took Kunjiwala, to pry into their affairs and found out that they didn't have the capacity to do what they wanted to do.
And they could not have been working alone, unfortunately.
Again, the P&ID issue focuses on the same kind of issue, where you have some low-level officers in government, setting aside some basic conditions that should have been contained in that agreement for these guys to come in. And when they didn't fulfill their obligations, the same people did not cancel this contract. They waited until these guys took us to court, and we're almost going to rip off the country of a huge sum of money before the federal government woke up from a deep slumber and I was able to stave it.
Mm. Now, what's your sort of read of how this could all pan out? You've just said, and I've heard it said before, that in a situation like this, even if you don't have all of the 75 million odd, even if you were to, talk with them, it's 30 I have, it's 35 I have, it's 40 I have. Because of the situation, they just want to get out of this. Everybody wants to get out of this. They likely would take it. What are the options that are now left? Clearly, we can't pursue the legal option of we are, you need to rule in our favor because we've blown all our chances. I understand from legal commentary I've been hearing that it wasn't just one chance we had.
Yeah, so many chances.
So many chances.
So many opportunities.
Yes.
We could have nipped this in the bud. So I think that there are several options, but I think the most viable, a political diplomatic solution, in which case the federal government will engage the Chinese government and trying to see how the two parties can be brought together to enter into some sort of arrangement where a lesser amount of money than agreed could be paid, or they are allowed back to continue with the job. That's one. Now, but the most important thing coming out of this is the fact that we don't operate a system that penalizes those who drop the ball.
It's a very important point.
We don't. Because you see, in some other parts of the world, the two former governors who were involved in this arrangement would be in handcuffs, waiting for trial.
Yeah.
But you see, what we are saying is, how will Ogun State or the federal government pay this money? And there will be no consequences for the guys who entered and terminated this whole thing, creating this problem. So we also need to look at our law enforcement. How do we punish people who mortgage national interests? How do we deal with them so that others can look back and say there'll sure be consequences for this kind of behavior?
You said something. People have their clout. People have their connections. It all started back in Governor Daniel's time. By the time it came on to Governor Amosun, I think the connection is well known between Governor Amosun and former President Buhari. So it is thought in some quarters, rightly or wrongly, that was a kind of a leverage that allowed him to do what he did at the time. Even though he's, as you know, he's busy, sort of, well, the way papers put it is that he's broken his silence on the matter.
Well, he doesn't have a choice but to speak to the issue. And also, you must also factor in the toxic relationship between the two men, Gbenga Daniels and Amosun. They were great friends, but along the line, they went their separate ways. Mm-hmm. And so for Amosun, as the time he took over from Gbenga Daniels, probably felt that this was a project of the previous government. It has nothing to do with my administration.
Yes.
So there was no attachment. And that's where we have a big problem in this country. Government is a continuum.
It is supposed to be.
You don't even have to like your predecessor or your successor. Whatever is done in the interest of the state has to be preserved. And that is the same approach we are seeing from the current government in Ogun State. They are simply saying, this was done and dusted 12 years ago before we even came into power. But then you have assumed the reins of power.
Of course.
So it behoves you. It's now your responsibility and duty to ensure that the Ogun State people and by extension, the Nigerian people gets the first shake from what has happened. No, so to just come out and say, oh, it wasn't us, it wasn't me. This happened 12 years before I came. It's not a solution.
Neither is it a defense. Going from that very principle
of
governance is a continuum.
From the moment you took over the government, you've inherited the assets and liability of the government. So it's not an excuse to say, oh, but because whether you like it or not, it's had opportunities in the 5 years plus that he's been governor to deal with this issue. And he could have dealt with the issue.
Apart from this whole thing about some governors not wanting to have anything to do with their predecessors, especially if their relationship was, as we say in Nigeria, one kind. If it was one kind, then this is what we have. And as you said, former Governor Amosun, he's feeling, for some reason, he seems to feel that he's blameless in this whole affair.
So
Governor Daniel.
What are you expecting? He will come out and say, crucify me. I'm the one who caused the problem.
And then there's something else going on between him and Patutomi that people are saying, is this not a red herring? Which one is this one you're bringing to this?
So the argument between him and Patutomi was that Pat had brought some investors into Ogun State. And as a requirement, they were made to pay a certain amount of money. But at some point, the Ogun State government was not moving forward with the agreement. And so there was a need to get their funds back. Pat said that he traveled, he went to Abeokuta, met with the governor, and in fact, they traveled back to Lagos together. And the governor asked him to write a letter for refund of some part of the money, which he did, and they got. And then the balance, he never got it. So he felt that what happened, what is happening to Ogun State now, and by extension the federal government, is justified. That there's a track record with Ogun State when it comes to not honoring...
Which is a bit of bad blood again.
Yes. But
because from the point of view of the governor, Patutomi was trying to pull a fast one on him.
Yeah, but in fact, he said the government before him blacklisted Patutomi.
Yes.
And Patutomi said, we're not even whitelisted, not to talk of being blacklisted by the same government.